Excuse me. Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water here. In this essay, I'd like to talk about employee performance reviews. Now, there've been a number of articles sort of going around the business websites and business sections of some of the media saying that employee evaluations are a bit like examinations or tests in college or high school or anywhere in society, that whenever people are held to an independent objective standard of performance, that this discriminates against minorities and favours white people, particularly white men. So we can conclude from that white men are by far and away the more reliable and, more reliable and productive employees, and all the minorities are not. So in order to change that and create equality, what we'll do is just dispense with employee evaluation, or we'll evaluate on intangibles where, particularly female employees, but minorities in general, say that in the intangibles, in the sort of the vague sort of fuzzy miasma of social justice, that they actually are doing wonderful things. For example, there's one woman who's commented on one of the online forums, commented that she regularly in the workplace, she regularly talks about the dangers of climate change and how the world's going to end. And so she's creating awareness about climate change. So she says that she, in her employee evaluation, she should be judged on her contribution to fighting climate change in the workplace, because she's telling other people about it. And so really, she's a fantastic employee who is worthwhile and productive and doing something good. And so and they talk about other things too. Another woman said, well, she's raising awareness about the gender wage gap at work, so this alone should merit her well-paid employment. Another woman says that she's talking about how evil the patriarchy is. Another one saying, well, she points out the evils of capitalism, and so on and so forth. So all these things should mean that they don't have to be judged on actual performance in a commercial setting. And the only reason that actual productive performance is being measured or required to be is because it's a capitalist society. And if it wasn't, and capitalism is evil and it's fascist and it's Nazi and it's white male and the patriarchy and so on. So if we take capitalism out of the equation, then actual productive performance isn't necessary, or you don't need to measure it because it's irrelevant, and therefore everyone can then be equal. Now, this is the same sort of argument you see really in schools, where the claim is that if we do away with tests, then black people or minorities can't fail the tests because there isn't any tests, and therefore everyone is thus equal because no one's being measured. There's no way of determining who's better at mathematics or who's better at, I don't know, science or English or whatever the subject is. So just do away with the tests, or the other option is to make the tests so minimal that everybody passes and nobody fails. There's that, or to change the measuring criteria. Now we see this in the courts, for example, where you see ideological law applying. So the facts and the evidence actually don't matter. Ideology matters. And ideology is, you come from a class of people that were once slaves, therefore the evidence you give must be of greater moral weight than the straight white male there, even though all the facts and all the evidence and the hard evidence and the impartial evidence, but all that may favor the straight white male, but because you're from an oppressed class, morally your evidence is more important, therefore you win the legal case. This is really the same sort of the architecture, if you like, of the argument here is being put forward. But I noticed, just looking at this on one business website, the piece about performance reviews are evil and the patriarchy and all that sort of stuff, that pretty much every person who responded was female. Not quite half were black, maybe a third were black. There were a few males, but seemed to be just gay guys doing the fellow traveling thing. But no one was putting forward an actual argument for it. Like saying, well, the reason performance reviews are bad or flawed or aren't perfect is and by the way, I'd be the first one to say they're not perfect. I've had, as you can imagine, over my time, many performance reviews, and if it's someone who doesn't like you, they don't give you a very good performance review, or they focus on the things that you're not good at, or they set it up so they can do a bad performance review. One time I was doing quite a bit of international traveling, and my boss who wanted he wanted to do some of the more prestigious international travel jaunts, and the CEO turned him down and said, no, Billy Bob me. Billy Bob's going to do it, and he's doing a great job. So this guy who wanted all the overseas traveling, again, just the prestigious locations, he didn't take kindly to me. He thought I'd set that up, which I hadn't, by the way. But he thought, so he was like out for revenge for denying him this opportunity for greatness. And so he would do dumb things, like he'd demand that where are you now, Billy Bob? I'm in Washington, but I'm just about to go to a meeting, so and so. And oh yeah, well look, I need your report about such and such, and I need it in an hour. I said, well, I can't do it. I'm just getting out of bed right now, and I'm going straight down to a breakfast meeting, which has been arranged. Oh yeah, well I need the report early. And if you don't do it, I'm going to bring that up in your performance review. That type of petty little power play bullshit. So there is. So I'd be the first to say our performance review is perfect. Well, of course they're not. Again, if the guy doesn't like you, then you're going to get a performance review that's not as good as if the guy does like you, if you get on well, or and again the petty office sort of politics. Another performance review thing that came out of the US quite some years ago now is that all your peers, as well as your boss, would give you a performance review. So everyone performance reviewed kind of everybody else, and this was meant to be somehow cleansing of people's bad behaviour or whatever. But I found it's quite the opposite. When I came across that a couple of times, I suppose, but I found that the people were actually colluding, saying, well, I'll give you a good performance review if you give me a good one. What are you saying about me? Okay, well, I'll say something good about you. So the whole thing was a fucking joke anyway. So performance review is where all the people in the chain are held to a performance standard. You must perform, you must produce, and you must deliver value for the company. And in relation to the company's goals, it could be how many widgets you're going to sell this year, or how many services you're going to sell in billable hours, or whatever it might be. But that focus is you're here to do a job and perform, and you do that impartially, independently, without fear or favour, and all your decisions are guided by, or made and guided by, this desire to perform, and that's that's the job you have to do. So, and once you get people focused on performance, like focus on that, then you find that performance reviews tend to relate to that, and they'll tend to give guidance to people. I always tried to do that. I'm sure I never did it perfectly, but I tried doing it as people I like and don't like. But I had to suspend. I don't like this, so I have to put this to one side and give them an honest review. And it may be that they were, for example, they were good at this aspect of the job, but they constantly came in late, or they were bickering with people internally, their colleagues, that they needed to get the job done, or there could be an aspect that they just weren't working hard enough, or they struggled to grasp complex issues. It didn't matter, but to say, well, this is where you're falling down, and this is where and how you could be better, and this is what you need to do to be more effective in your job. I always tried to give them something to go away with, where they could look at improving their performance in some way. And I never wanted to say to people, look, you're fucking useless or this or that. It's improving their performance in some way. And I never wanted to say to people, look, you're fucking useless or this or that. In some cases, by the way, they were, but maybe they were, the boss's, the CEO's best friend, or maybe they were related in some way. So you kind of had to be quite careful how you went about those things. But performance reviews are not perfect, and I accept that. But the way it's going is, and certainly the movement, the wave, if you will, is heading towards this idea, as it is in schools and colleges, is, well, let's just not evaluate anybody, or let's evaluate touchy-feely, intangibles that are somehow within the moral miasma that the leftists and the globalists help us along very much. The leftists seem to want to push. So just again, reading through the responses online, that people should receive people should be evaluated on intangibles. And one woman came up that she gave parental advice for childcare to a co-worker. Why does this not appear on the performance evaluation? Because that's good for morale or something like that. Now, I'll give in the overall sort of give and take of things, an ebb and flow. I remember there was a guy. He's a sales guy, sales representative, business development guy, and he never actually made his budget. He'd always make like 85% of budget or something like that, and he was probably the weakest sales guy there, or among the weakest. But he just brightened the place up somehow. He always was telling these jokes, some of them quite good, and these funny little stories. He was always smiling. He was always sort of chatty. He always had nice things to say about other people. I don't recall him ever saying something unpleasant about another person. And there was always a willingness. It was superficial. He would demonstrate this willingness to do the job, but he used to drag his feet pretty badly after the willingness conversation you had with him. But nonetheless, he was, you just couldn't not like this guy, and he just was just a few degrees off being useless, worse than useless, and so when it came to performance valuation, I'd say, or I would sit in it. I wasn't his direct boss, but I was sitting in on it, and I believe that I didn't like managers that reported me doing the performance evaluations without some sort of oversight on them, because I didn't want anyone to turn the performance evaluation into some personal fucking vendetta, because that would have corrupted the whole idea of it, which is to give someone an honest evaluation, say this is how you can get better, or what you need to do to get better. So I'd sit on some of these, and this guy, this guy, the nice guy who he was getting his evaluation, and I can remember sitting in the room now. I can remember it quite vividly, and he. The evaluation he got is you're not making the numbers, but if you try hard and try harder, you'll get there. You've got all the basic sort of raw material to be successful, and you just need to be a little bit more focused and not be quite so lazy and careless about a few things. And but that was it. It was kind of, he kind of got a bit of a free pass because he was, he just brightened the place up. If he was off sick for a day, people would come around and, well, where's Billy Bob? Where's Jimmy Jack? I miss his little stories, and he had that effect on the place. So you can say there are intangibles, as in things that aren't direct performance, that are of somehow, in the wider scheme of things, of value. So I do concede that is something that whether you evaluate it for that, when you put a little thing in the performance evaluation, Billy Bob makes everyone laugh with his good jokes, we'll forget about his performance. There's a limit to how far you can go on that. But that was not far off the case with this guy. Coming back to the comments, you said, well, I gave someone advice, or I told a girl to to say, well, that guy who looked at your ass was actually sexually harassing you, take it to court. I should get extra. I should get dispensations from performance. So, but the whole thing, every posting from a minority is to say that I should get a special dispensation from being accountable. I don't have to be responsible for performance because of, well, just because, and therefore the push by minorities to remove all exams, all testing, all grading, all accountability, all responsibility is really on. And again, it's the globalists are fully supporting this because it creates a society that completely breaks down. The people that are prepared to be responsible are the Nazis, and the people who aren't responsible and lazy and good for nothing and do nothing, they're the good people. But in fact, they're bringing society down to below the lowest common denominator. And we wonder why in certain sort of in African societies nobody wants to be responsible for anything, why they don't build wealth or live anything beyond day to day. That's why. Because if you want to create that type of equality, that means nobody wants to take the responsibility for anything. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.